Have another recording here. So what I'll be doing is if I can find these, I'm going to name our recordings by subject. So we're going to have a body regions recording and a term of directions recording for this. That's probably good that you have short little Zoom recordings instead of these 3 hour or 2 hour marathon recordings. It's easier to just view them from start to finish like a short YouTube video instead of a long YouTube video. Anyway, let's start with the body regions. Quite a few of these, and they have multiple names, a lot of them. So, first of all, we will deal with what's called the trunk, head, neck, and trunk, or torso, and then we'll deal with the extremities. Like I mentioned, upper extremity are the arms, lower extremity are the legs. So the head, we can generally call that a cephalic region. The neck is generally speaking the cervical region. And then everything below the neck, medial to the shoulder joint and superior to the hip joint here, or the acetabulofemoral joint as it's called, is referred to as the trunk or torso. So this torso or trunk, you're going to have a thoracic region, an abdominal region, and a pelvic region. Oftentimes, things will be named according to the region they're in or according to the region that they service. So we might have a brachiocephalic artery, supplies blood to the head and upper extremity. We might have a cervical vertebrae or thoracic vertebrae. We might have a splenius cervicis muscle. We might have a quadratus femoris muscle. All these things, well, I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them will have elements to their name that tell you kind of where they go. Okay, let's deal with one small part at a time here. The cephalic region, because so much is happening here, you have eyes, nose, mouth, brain case. It's divided into a lot of different areas or subregions. So with the cephalic region, we have the cranial portion, the brain case or cranium, and then we have the facial portion where it's a lot more bony. Not much brain matter in the facial portion. It's all eyes, nasal cavity, mouth, teeth, and lots of muscles that enable facial expression and movement of the jaw. Okay, yeah, if you're gonna fall off a skateboard and break this thing, try to break it right here or here. Try not to ever have anything bad happen to this cranial part here. Okay, so within a cranial portion, there's 4 main regions here, and they're sort of named for the bones that underlie them, and there's also muscles in the area and arteries in the area that bear the names of these regions. So anteriorly, we have a frontal region. As I'm shaded all the regions in gray here, this is just pulled off the internet. Problem with this diagram is that the skull should be a lot smaller than a fleshed out face because these muscles are actually thick. But oh well, it's not. So there's going to be some slight problems in viewing this as we look at additional details. So we have a frontal region. We have frontal lobes of the brain. We have a frontalis muscle. There's frontal fontanelles and fetal skulls. And so those things kind of tell you, the names tell you where they are. And again, anterior view versus lateral view. Look how these things change shape when you change your viewing angle. I started to say side. No, we're supposed to say lateral view here. Okay, there's a parietal region, and inside of here is something called the parietal lobe of the brain, and there's also a parietal bone. A bony portion of the skull, kind of like a bony plate that joins with other bony plates that are curved to form the cranial portion of the skull. So there's a bunch of things here that are named parietal in this parietal region. I got to change lobe here to region because the parietal lobe let's just say REGION. There we go. Now, know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to save this file. There we go. Always finding typos. Okay, so if we go to, this is not really the back. It's sort of a posterior view, yes, but it's also downwards. So it's kind of like an inferior view, and it's lateral. My God, it's diagonal on 3 axes. So you could say posterolateral or inferior posterolateral or inferior posterolateral. So however you want to describe this angle of viewing. Anyway, that's the posterior region from this viewing angle. Okay, occipital lobe is shaded on gray. All the regions on these photographs are going to be shaded in the same gray here. So occipital lobe from the lateral angle. And here it is. Can I say from the back? I'm sorry, my bad, from the posterolateral aspect. So this occipital region, definitely hard to see from just the side. The straight lateral viewpoint shows up much better at an angle from the back. Quite a few things in the body are going to be better visible, more visible, better viewed from not just the side, but at an angle. Oftentimes the straight anterior, straight lateral, straight posterior viewpoints, as are shown in the textbooks, aren't the best ways to view these things because these are complicated, curvilinear, round, 3-dimensional structures. Uh-oh, my signal's cutting out. That is not cool. Let's see, whoops, I did not want to. There we go. I'm just tightening cables here, and hopefully it's behaving itself. This laptop is my gaming station, and I picked it up. One day, a screw fell out from the bottom. I tightened up the screw, and I tightened all the screws, and it was behaving a lot better after that. But apparently, the Wi-Fi connectivity, I don't know if it's my internet, if it's the Wi-Fi antenna on this computer, which is deep on the inside, or what. Okay, so that's that for the occipital region. Temporal regions, viewed from the anterior, are really not that prominent. Let's view them from the side. Now they're quite prominent. So we have a temporal region, which technically contains the ear, but structures associated with the ear itself are referred to as the auricular region. So we had another term for ear is auricle or pinna. You have an auricularis muscle, superior, anterior, posterior auricularis muscles. And then you have the temporal region, which kind of encompasses that. Now, in the temporal region, there's a temporal lobe inside the skull. There's a temporal bone forming part of the skull. There's a temporalis muscle located here as well. Whole bunch of stuff with the term temporal in it associated with this region. Okay, different view of the temporal area without the auricular region superimposed on top of it, just straight temporal region. Okay, now let's deal with the facial component of the skull. Now that we're done, I'm sorry, yeah, facial component of the skull or facial component of the cephalic region. We're done with the cranial portion. So when you hear the term orbit, you don't really have to think about satellites. Oh yeah, these for your exams, generally speaking, almost every single image on any exam can be found somewhere on these PowerPoint presentations. I really try to avoid using copyrighted stuff like this. I prefer to use my own content. But there's plenty of that coming up. Just photographs of supplies and stuff that we had in the classroom. Since I took the images and modified them and made them public domain, there's no copyright to violate. So anyone can, anywhere can use it free of charge without worrying about getting sued or having Pearson or Wiley's attorneys coming after you. Anyway, so anything associated with the eye socket is said to be orbital. So we have orbital regions. The bony part of the skull that surrounds the eye is called the orbit, and this hole in here, there's an eyeball that should go in here. That's called the orbital fossa. Okay, so that's the orbital region. Now, nasal region involves the nose. The $5 scientific word for nose is nasal ala. I've heard the term alar region, A-L-A-R, used to describe this. I think more people use the term nasal than alar, but some of you may have heard the term alar region. On a fill-in-the-blank exam, I would take nasal region or alar region, because quite frankly, there are parts of the world where they teach alar. It's a valid, accepted scientific term. Okay. The mouth, very specifically, notice this shaded area is very restricted here. It doesn't cover the area between the lip and the nose. It doesn't go up to the cheeks here. It doesn't go down to the chin or the bottom of the jaw. It's very tightly restricted around the mouth. This is the oral region. Upper jaw and lower jaw, specifically the bony parts of them that anchor the teeth, those are considered separate from the oral cavity and the oral region. So this there, where I'm putting the cursor right now above the upper lip, but below the nose, that is not the oral region at all. That would be the maxillary region. I'm going to move the cursor down here. Where I have the cursor now, that would be the mandibular region. Now where I have the cursor right here, that's mental region. But all of that's illustrated soon enough here. Okay, so I just mentioned upper jaw. The bony part of the upper jaw is contained within the maxillary region. You can also call it the maxilla, but technically the maxilla is also a name of the bone there. And that's the problem where we run into the problem illustrating the details of this is where the skull is the same size of the fleshed out face. And it's like, no, the bony portion should be somewhat smaller than that. Okay, but like I said, the diagram was free, so that was that. The area below, I'm sorry, did I say below? My bad. The area inferior and lateral to the oral cavity is called the mandibular region, but mid-sagittally or mid-sagittally, right and left mandibular regions come together and they form a mental region. Yeah, I know you hear the word mental, you think, oh, it has something to do with the brain and its function here. No, in this case, the mental region is here. You have a symphysis menti, you have a mental protuberance, you know, you have a mental branch of a mandibular blood vessel. And there's even a mentalis muscle down there as well. Okay, lateral view of the same thing. So I tried to keep the color coding similar here. Blue is mental area. Then we have mandibular, this dark gray. And then this gray up here is the maxillary region. Now, ever bite the inside of your cheek, especially if your mouth gets kind of numb, you've been eating raw pineapple or something like that, and you get that numb, tingly feeling, and you start biting stuff inside your mouth? This green area here that you would have bitten is called the buccal region. And then this purple region here, kind of like a part of the contour of the cheekbones, that right there is referred to as the zygomatic region. Now we have the oral region here in yellow. Okay, so we're sort of done with the cephalic region. There's a few other sub-regions here, but we'll leave it at that. This is plenty complicated enough. Now let's deal with the neck and the trunk. So we have the thoracic region, and that's associated with the rib cage and the heart and the lungs. Deep inside here on this skeleton diagram here, this red line approximately follows the boundary or the interior location of a diaphragm muscle. So the diaphragm is the internal, deep inside boundary between the thoracic region above and the abdominal region inferiorly located. And then below the abdomen or abdominal region, we have the pelvis, also known as the pelvic region. So you put your hands on your hip bones. You can feel what's called an iliac crest of your hip bones or os coxa. And that's sort of the front, the anterior most portion of that denotes the top boundary of the pelvic region. And then you can make a triangular shaped space between the line between the top of your hip bones here, down here to an area called the pubic region or perineum, and that's essentially the pelvis or pelvic region. Okay, so each part of the torso and neck, since there's so much stuff going on here, you have heart, you have lungs, you have pectoral girdle, pelvic girdle, 3 different curvatures within a spinal cord, really a spinal column, vertebral column, really 4 curvatures. This has been divided into a lot of different spaces. So everything is color coded. This was like the original file here. And every time I uploaded this to Canvas, modified it, the color started changing. And I noticed that as I upload and download these same files of mine to work on, more and more code gets corrupted and changed. Okay, so let's deal with the anterior viewpoint here. First of all, in orange, I have the cervical region. Just inferior to the neck or cervical region, you can feel your collarbones. This is called the clavicular region. This is more anterior. You're not going to really see a clavicular region from the back that much because the collarbones are on the anterior side of the body here. Mid-sagittally located, you have the breastbone or sternum, and this comprises the sternal region. And then where your pectoral muscles would be, breasts, that's called the pectoral region. On this diagram, this little angle here, this is just drawn extra large to show its presence. It sort of intrudes on the pectoral region. It's really more laterally facing. The armpit is known as the axilla or axillary region. So you're going to have an axillary artery, an axillary nerve, you'll have axillary lymph nodes, a lot of stuff in the axilla or axillary region here. Now, below the pectoral region, inferior to the pectoral region, inferior to the sternum, you have an area that's just ribs only. This is referred to as the costal region. Even though there's ribs all the way up here, although there's ribs almost to the clavicular region, and really there's some ribs kind of deep to it. Okay, so if you see pectoralis major muscle, pectoralis minor muscle, angina pectoris, sternocleidomastoid muscle, costochondral articulation, costochondritis, that's all these terms are going to give you an idea as to where in the body the issue is. All of this stuff should be printable. If you my God, man, this is all color. You are going to be paying so much money in printer ink. I spent like $140 at Costco for color cartridges for my printer. You can photocopy it, download it. It's free to the whole world to use, but oh my God, the expense is going to be insane. I know, because I tried printing out stuff and it's like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to leave it in electronic storage on a stick drive, on Dropbox, and on Canvas. Okay, so there's a bunch of things going on here on the posterior side. Purple is cephalic here, but this yellowish area here, this yellowish area is the posterior side of the neck. You could say this is a cervical region, and a lot of textbooks and lab manuals will, but this has also been referred to as the nuchal region or nape. And technically, the nuchal region should be a little bit more sagittal in its location and less lateral. Okay, so we have things like a nuchal ligament located here. We have nuchal lines on the skull near this region. This blue area going down here, the contemporary terminology is vertebral area only, or vertebral region only where it overlays the backbone or spinal column. Some might break it into a cervical portion, thoracic portion, lumbar portion. Within the back here, and again, we kind of have a thoracic region, abdominal, and pelvis. We're still part of the trunk with all these regions. The area that's kind of shaded in light green here, the entire area minus the upper arm, that would all be torso because it's thoracic and up top, lumbar, I'm sorry, not lumbar, abdominal inferiorly. Some people differentiate the scapular region where you have a shoulder blade bone deep inside the posterior thoracic aspect. I didn't really highlight those on the worksheets, but some individuals do. This diagram here, I have the diaphragm shown to show from the posterior angle the difference between the thoracic and abdominal space. Now, this little white area, which really should go all the way across and encompass this purple portion of the vertebral region, this traditionally was known as the lumbar region. There are some textbooks that teach that. However, contemporary thought now has the lumbar region elsewhere, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you want to do a DuckDuckGo.com search for, or if you want to use Bing or Google, go for it. Do a search for lumbar region and then just click on images only. Relatively few people talk about this as being the lumbar region anymore. Even though you think lumbar pain, oh, it's in your lower back, down in the abdominal space. Let's go to the chat here. Vertebral and ventral are not the same thing. Yeah, all this stuff is on Canvas everywhere. If you got here late and didn't see me showing you where it all was, oopsie daisy. Anyway, so lumbar region for the little white areas here, but there's another lumbar region on the body. We'll get to that in a second here. Okay, abdominal region in purple. So these were the original colors. I had all of these worksheets in, and look how they just faded to different. It's like, I don't know. It's weird to see your code corrupted as you upload and download the same file over and over again and just work on it and modify it. That's why I have everything on stick drive now, because it's more than just color and font that's been getting corrupted. Anyway, so this thing we call the abdominal region, from the anterior view, we can divide it into 9 different squares. So we've got a tic-tac-toe board here. These little squares are known as abdominal quadrats. I see fewer and fewer people use the term quadrat or quadrant, and more people are using the term region here, even though sensu stricto, from the strictest linguistic sense here, quadrat is the better, more rigorous term. I'm not writing the textbooks. I'm just teaching and collecting my paycheck and smiling when the check don't bounce. So, I can't really make a big deal out of it, but it is what it is. I think they might have had a South Park episode on me where old man yells at cloud. Oh no, that would have not been South Park. That would have been, was it Family Guy, American Dad, Futurama? I forget. Anyway, so we all have our pet peeves. Anyway, so these 9 abdominal quadrats are named as follows. We have a right hypochondriac quadrat. The majority of people on the internet are using the term region. I just downloaded this thing off the internet and say, oh, cool, I can stick this here for this PowerPoint. And I didn't change region to quadrat because I had to Photoshop too much stuff. Anyway, hypo means just underneath, just below, and chondrio means ribs. Well, cartilaginous portion of the ribs to be specific. So costo refers to ribs. Chondriac should really mean cartilage. So hypochondriac means just below the base of the ribs. And then we have the middle region, at the superior middle portion, epigastric region, umbilical region, hypogastric region. And then we have the other use of the term lumbar. Okay, the reason I prefer lumbar quadrat to lumbar region here is because everyone and their brother and the horse they rode in on and the horse their brother rode in on and their moms are all going to confuse this lumbar region with this lumbar region. Or if we could just call this the lumbar region and these lumbar quadrats, that would change things. In the Eldar days of yore, when I was actually taking this class, first in high school and then in college, this was referred to as the right lateral abdominal quadrat and left lateral abdominal quadrat. You can use whichever one you want. I am fine with either. If the worksheet is fill in the blank. If there's a worksheet where it's a drop-down menu and the terms are available for you to use, you don't have to worry about which term to use. It's a multiple choice type thing, and you just choose the best term. The rest of the world is now calling this lumbar region, so I guess I will too. Unless someone pays me to swim against the current, then I will. Okay, so your lower back hurts, you're going to tell the doc you got lumbar pain. If your left lateral abdominal quadrat, left lumbar region hurts, you're going to say, oh, I got abdominal pain, but whatever. The iliac quadrats down here, we have also seen those called inguinal quadrats or inguinal regions. So iliac or inguinal, those terms are also interchangeable. And again, you do an internet search, images, DuckDuckGo, Bing, Google, and there's another search engine that's an anonymizer like DuckDuckGo, so it doesn't spy on you. Because as we have social credit scores getting adopted here in the United States, your internet search history and browsing history could affect your ability to buy an airplane ticket, get a loan, attend college. It's going to be very ominous, and you'll wish it had never gotten to that point, but oh well, it is what it is. That's why I like anonymized search engines like DuckDuckGo.com. You do a search, and most of the sources that come up will refer to this as the iliac region, not so much iliac quadrat or inguinal region or inguinal quadrat. Okay, so these quadrats, this tic-tac-toe board we made, it's kind of important. The reason it's important in life is because we have this thing called referred pain. So the way referred pain works, we'll talk about that in physiology class. I might even talk about it a little in this class with one image, one slide. You have nerves passing through the one part of the body from another region on their way to the brain. So think of the brain as like downtown LA, and this is like Gardena, and the feet are like San Pedro, Harbor City, the port area, Long Beach. You drive from Long Beach through Gardena into LA. It's kind of like following a path of one of these nerves here. And you could have a problem here, deep, that the brain is going to think is coming from the surface, even though it's deep inside you. It's deep in one of the other organs. So pain in one of these abdominal quadrats that you might think is, oh, did I pull a muscle? Did I not warm up enough when I was working out yesterday? What happened? Why am I hurting here? It could be an internal issue, like gallstones in the gallbladder, inflamed pancreas, kidney stones, and UTI, urinary tract infection. Maybe your appendix is swollen. Maybe you got a bladder infection, diverticulitis in the large intestine, a lot of stomach issues, top and front and center. So pain in a given region oftentimes will indicate an underlying problem with one of these organs down here. That's why the abdominal quadrats are important. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying you could see something like this on a lab exam, and there might be the letter A here. Oops, I did not write protect this presentation. And the question would be, okay, so we have the right hypogastric region here, or quadrat. Pain here would be most likely due to what underlying organ? You'd say gallbladder here, appendix here, stomach here, large intestine here, but you could also say, whoops, you could also say kidneys, urinary bladder down here. So different ways you could answer that depending on this little map here. Okay, let's go down to the pelvic region. Oh, you know what? One last thing. I should talk about the lumbar region, the actual lumbar that I was taught. The last ribs, ribs number 12, short little things, barely 2 inches, 5 centimeters, 6 centimeters in length. They form the upper boundary of the lumbar region. The inferior boundary of this lumbar region, as we've classically taught it, put your hands on your hips like you're waiting for the 5-year-old to pick up their Legos before going to bed and they're not listening to you that it's bedtime and you're getting impatient. You can feel with your thumbs posteriorly with your hands on your hips, the sharp bony part, the inferior boundary of this lumbar region here. Okay, now what made me think of that was this skeleton I have here. Okay, so the pelvic region. A lot of people on worksheets and tests confuse this for the pubic region. It's not, it's technically referred to as the pelvis. So the boundary of the pelvis, feel your hip bones, that iliac crest, and then a triangular shape down from there. So the pubic region would be like right about here, mid-sagittally located, but still inferior to the rest of the pelvis, or the pelvic region. And then is an inferior most portion that faces downwards, faces inferiorly, straight down to the ground. You can call that the perineal region, perineum, pudendum, or pudendal region. But the pubis is technically not labeled here. And the arrows, none of the arrows or lines even end on it. Okay, so that's the anterior part of the pelvic region. Posteriorly, there's a mid-sagittally and superiorly located sacral region. The butt cheeks are basically overlay the gluteal region. And then there's the perineal region also viewed from the back, the posterior view. The perineum or perineal region, basically posteriorly, it forms at the anus, and then it goes anteriorly to encompass the external genitalia, and then it terminates right here at the base of the pelvic region where these two hip bones join together in a pad of cartilage. Okay, now for the extremities. So, big difference between the anterior view and the posterior view. I'm going to stop the share. So, look at this guy, your typical muscle model. And if you look at the diagrams in the anatomy lab manuals, I need to turn on the light here. Oh my God, now I got too much glare and overexposure. Woo! Videography, if you've ever taken a photography class, videography is like that, only 10 times more complicated. You look at a YouTube video, you think, oh my God, I should make YouTube videos and get, 700,000 a year and be rich, or be like Ryan's World. They make like $20 million a year on their YouTube stuff with Ryan and Gummy Gator and all that. And oh my God. Anyway, so dealing with lighting conditions like this is one of those things that makes it harder than it looks. Anyway, none of these models, none of the textbook drawings, none of the lab manual drawings are ever in anatomical position. They're always like this. So again, in order to assess the body regions and the names of the muscles, nerves, blood vessels, bones, bony structures in these body regions, you got to automatically rotate everything to anatomical position. Okay, so let's go back to our screen share here for the extremities and go back to where we were. Okay, so we'll start at the top. My bad, my very, very bad. We will start proximally. and work our way distally. Okay, so again, let's go back to that muscle model. Proximal, distal, proximal, distal. That way, we factor out the position of an arm or a leg. It's always proximal, distal, whether the dude's raising his hand or whether his hand's down or whatever. Okay, so most proximal, we have the shoulder. This thing called the acromial region, honestly, it has like 5 different terms that describe it. It has been described as the deltoid region. Authorities. The most unfortunate word. Okay, authorities. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save. See, I always find typos here and there. I made all these files in the heat of like March 13 lockdown, trying to get stuff online for the students to access it easily. And when you crank out a huge amount of productivity really fast and you don't have a proofreader, there's errors that you find months and months later. Let's put an apostrophe there. There we go. And save it again. I have to re-upload this now that it's corrected. Anyway, this thing we call the acromial region, it has been called the deltoid region, also the omos region in the past. And here's something that annoys me. These scientific terms, they fall out of favor and then they come back into favor, just like styles of clothing and styles of cars, car body design. You know, when I was going through school, retro car design was in, and people had stuff like the PT Cruiser, Ford Thunderbird, Porsche came out with a Boxster and all of that stuff like that. And it was like retro. And then there was a trend I thought we'd never see again, and I was free from it. It was called skinny jeans for guys. Oh my God, you talk about stuff from the past you want to see stay in the past and go extinct like the dinosaurs. Skinny jeans for guys, one of them. Well, so the scientific terminology is the same way. You have these old school terms coming back and becoming new school again. Right now, acromial region is dope. That's in 5 years from now, they might say, oh no, we're calling it the omos region again. And you just roll your eyes and say whatevs. Okay, so there's an acromial process of the scapula. There's basically an acromial end of the clavicle bone. There's a muscle called the omohyoid that goes from the omos region to what's called the hyoid bone. So there's a lot of things that have their term that are defined by where they are here and have the term omo or acromial in. And then of course, there's a major muscle that goes over this called the deltoid muscle. The hand is complex, but before we even talk about the hand, let's work our way distal. Upper arm, front or back, right or left, medial or lateral is called the brachium or brachial region. So you'll have a brachialis muscle, you have a coracobrachialis, you have a brachioradialis, you'll have a brachial artery, a lot of stuff in this brachial region. The anterior part of your elbow joint, the inside of your elbow, is called the antecubital region. And then we have your forearm, which is the antebrachium or antebrachial region, regardless of what angle you view it from. Then you got those short little band of wrist bones that if you don't treat them right, they make it hell getting old. They form the carpal region. In the carpal region, there are carpal bones. There's sheaths that surround tendons called carpal tunnels. You get those inflamed, you get carpal tunnel syndrome. Now we got the hand itself. So this entire hand can be referred to as the manus, but the anterior portion here in anatomical position is the palmar surface facing forwards, and the back of your hand is referred to as the dorsum of the hand or dorsal surface. And in anatomical position, this faces back or posteriorly. There's some other issues here with the hand and the feet. Let me, here we go. I got these diagrams here. right here and right here is important, but we'll get to that. Okay, let's just deal with the lower extremity. So up here in orange, pelvis, gray, perineum, and blue here, kind of purplish blue, off to facing straight laterally outwards is the coxal region. A lot of folks ignore the coxal, but it's kind of like the lateral side of the hip, where the hip joint, you know, the femur, your thigh bone goes into the pelvic girdle. Then the thigh period, regardless of how we view it from what angle, is just the femoral region. Front, back, medial, lateral, right, left, it's all femoral region. Anterior portion of the knee is called the patellar region. There's a bone called the patella. There's things called pre-patellar bursae, post-patellar bursae. There's a patellar ligament, a whole bunch of patellar stuff here. Now, when we rotate this 180 degrees and view it posteriorly, there's going to be something else entirely there. No, not a bone at all, but arteries and veins and soft tissue and nerves. Your shin, the anterior part of the lower of the leg, is referred to as the crura or crural region. And then you have some ankle bones, and that makes up the tarsal region from the front. The bony part of your feet is the metatarsal region, and then toes make up the digital or phalangeal region. However, on this diagram, as I have it drawn here, we have a dorsum of the foot, basically the top, the dorsal surface or dorsum of foot, and then the sole of your foot is referred to as the plantar surface. So dorsal surface and plantar surface are just surfaces, sides of this overall pedal region, which encompasses the foot in its entirety. And then within the pedal region, you have the tarsal area, the metatarsal area, and the digital region there. Feet and hands are complicated. So that was anterior. Let's deal with a posterior view. A few changes. So the back of your elbow, the part you used to find doorknobs and furniture you didn't know was behind you. This used to be called the cubitus or cubital region. That's old school. How old school? My God, I was an undergraduate in college at the time. Now everyone is referring it to as the olecranal region or olecranal region. Let's stick with the new school here, olecranal region. Back of the knee, I'm sorry, my bad. Posterior aspect of the knee is referred to as the popliteum or popliteal region. Your choice of terminology there, I'm fine with either one. Calf of the legs, this is referred to as the sural region, and you have a big muscle group called the triceps surae in here. Now, let's see, I already saved this file, so I can do this. I can expand things. So we have the sural region in this turquoisey green color, the tarsal region in this lighter blue color, and then posteriorly, the heel and the Achilles tendon. This has been referred to as the calcaneal region, kind of still a part of the pedal region overall, a posterior part of the tarsal area. And it also encompasses some of the plantar surface of the foot, the calcaneal region here. Okay, so there's a lot going on with the hands and feet. They cause us a lot of physical pain in life. So they've been well studied and broken down into a lot of areas because they're important to a person's quality of life, or if you have a lot of pain, a lack thereof. Okay, so let me just blow that up, expand it to where it was. Okay, we're good. Now, we've pretty much covered all of the body regions. Tomorrow, we are going to be covering cells. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop share here. and we'll deal with this guy. I should probably turn him into a worksheet for regions and muscles. But before we go, let's go to Canvas. And why are you, no, got it. I don't want sleeping tabs. That was a weird thing to come up on the screen there. So here we are in lab, and this activated Body Regions Assignment version 2. So ordinarily in the 2 hours to 3 hours of lab, you guys would be working together in the room with models and skeletons on it, fully articulated, assembled plastic skeletons that come out on wheeled racks. And you would be doing worksheets like this in a $70 or $80 lab manual. So I just made all this. So we have body regions here and body regions there. For any one of these, let's look at H. Oh, there we go, H. So what are the possibilities for H? I see crural, tarsal, sural, carpal. How's about if we pick tarsal? And you can fill all these out. You have a list of words and terms. Let me go down here and look at, what was it? There's some of these were tricky. Let's check L, lumbar region, on the posterior view here. And okay, that one's not tricky. Some of these are tricky. And the reason why they're tricky is because you could have multiple answers that would all be correct. Here we go. Q is a tricky thing on this worksheet. So we look at Q and we say, oh, that's the dorsum of the foot, because he said it was the dorsum of the foot on the PowerPoint on the Zoom meeting. Yeah, but I also said other stuff. Let's just put dorsum. Oh, come on, man. It's supposed to give me feedback instantly. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit this quiz because I'm a test student and I don't care. I have more than 2. And let's see. It tells you, okay, you got tarsal right. But some of these, here we go. In the case of the dorsum, as an answer for number 17, the question asks what body region? Dorsal surface or plantar surface, palmar surface, those are sides of a body region, not the body region itself. So this is getting you trained for the actual lab practical. A lot of lab practical images on the very first lab exam are just taken off of these. I mean, I can just literally right click this and save the image, modify the image, and redo it and change it for an actual exam or a graded timed quiz. So these worksheets, I know they're programmed as quizzes, but it's really a lab exercise. So if we look at this, we edit this bad boy. Oh, heck, I didn't even need to do that. 3-hour time limit and 10 attempts allowed. It keeps your highest score. And this is programmed to let you see the correct answers, because in person, you would have an $80 lab manual and you'd have someone like me in the room to answer questions. So this isn't meant to mimic that. So I want to see everybody get a full perfect score, 20 out of 20 on this. There's a whole bunch of these in this class, such that you might not do so good on the exams in anatomy class, but if you do all the work, you're still going to pass this class. If everyone's able to devote the time to it, then I don't really see why anyone should not pass this class. That being said, having to work and do everything from home is wrecking people's lives horribly. So sometimes life interferes and you miss a bunch of stuff. I've seen that happen. It's happened to me too. So I want to see near perfect scores on all of these assignments. This is my view. You do not see this view on your Canvas, but these are all worksheets here. A few lab practicals, but a lot of worksheets here that I expect to see people get perfect or close to perfect scores on. So on the lecture exams and timed actual lab exams, if you don't do so good, it's not the end of the world. Even if you get like a D on the lecture or lab exams, if you have all the other work done, hopefully it should carry you and boost you up to a a C or even a B there. Okay, so that's how this stuff is sort of, everything is designed point-wise. Okay, I am going to stop share there, and let me just check the last chat message. Some of the exams are multiple choice, some are true, false, some are matching, some are fill in the blank, some are even short answer. As you know, multiple choice is easier for me to deal with because the computer grades them wink, wink, nod, nod. Okay, so with that being said, everybody have a happy Monday, and I will see y'all tomorrow.
Thank you.